Welcome to College Park News on channel Geology 204 with anchors Kara Hollenbeck and Stephanie Santos.
Welcome to College Park News with your anchors Kara
and Stephanie.
Today is May 6th. It is the 6th day of protesting from the engineering students over the tuition hike. Stephanie, these protests are just ridiculous. This needs to stop.
You're right, Kara. These protesters are making the University of Maryland look terrible in the world's eye. But on to more positive news, we're going out to our field reporter who is reporting on groundbreaking news in the science community. Alexis, you there?
We're out here with Gonzalez from the CENIEH, the Center of Human Evolution Investigation. He is presenting his groundbreaking research on the difference between Neanderthals and modern human child growth models. Here he is.
Hello guys, sadly Dr. Gonzalez could not present since we could not get cameras into the presentation, but I will give you a brief overview of the brilliant work that he's working on that's covering the differences between Neanderthal and modern human infant and child growth models, and hopefully after this brief overview you can understand a little bit more of this interesting work in human evolution. Just to give you some brief background on Neanderthals, which is the taxa being studied in this research paper, they're closely related to modern humans. Both fossil genetic evidence indicate that Neanderthals and modern humans evolved from common ancestors between 500,000 and 200,000 years ago. Their bodies were shorter and stockier than modern humans, and this is an adaptation to living in cooler environments. Their brains were just as large as ours and often larger. Their average brain size was around 1,450 cubic centimeters, whereas modern humans is around 1,345 cubic centimeters. Also, their diet consisted of large amounts of meat from animals, and this again was due to the cold environments they lived in and the lack of plant matter around there due to the environment. And lastly, all traces of Neanderthals disappeared around 40,000 years ago, meaning they're the last other hominid to be around Homo sapiens. So what is this paper looking at? This paper looks at the growth rates of Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens from birth to around 5 years old. And the real question this paper is looking at is, do humans and Neanderthals grow at the same rate during early childhood and infancy? So where did they collect their data from? Well, they had two distinct sets of data they needed to collect, the first being Neanderthals. They collected this data from 10 immature individuals ranging in age from birth to 5 years old, and these fossils were all over the place, different locations, Spain, and all that. Their ages of the individuals were calculated using different methods, all of which consisted either looking at the teeth of the individual or the actual skeleton of the individual. And these individuals had to have a femur or tibia that had a diaphysial length that could be measured, because this was crucial when it came to determining height of the individual. The other population was the modern humans. There was two sets of modern human populations that were used. The first were the indigenous Invinki reindeer herders of central Siberia, and the reason that these were collected was because they actually have a small stature, which would be common to the Neanderthals, and this is probably due to the cold environment they live in. Also, the individuals from a health clinic in Spain, which is what we considered an average-sized atomically modern humans. Estimating the age was really important in this study because they were looking at Neanderthals in early childhood and infancy, so they needed a specific range of fossils to study. So they used ages of the skeletal remains based on literature, and this literature determined the age using two different methods, either skeletal development or dental markers. And this allowed the scientists to calculate about an age range which the individual fell in between. So they were rather certain they knew that this individual was between this certain range, which allowed them to then use this in their data that they collected. So this chart that they had in the research paper showed the different types of methods they used, the source that they can, the literature that they found this from, the age that was estimated, and the site that it was found. And this was crucial in being able to find a specific estimated age of each individual set of fossils that they were going to then use as their data. So now that they had a set of fossils that fell within the age range that they wanted to study, they had to collect data from these fossils. So they decided that height was the best representative of growth in immature individuals, and that growth is what they wanted to study. But the problem arose: not all the skeletons are complete, so how do you measure the height? So they determined that they were going to have to use a mathematical model to determine height. So using the tibia and femur of the skeletons, they could determine the age using 3 different models. This would then give them a fairly accurate value for the height of these individuals. The other population they collected data from was much easier, that being atomically modern humans. The age estimation and data collection for the modern human population was rather easy. Age can be determined by skeleton, dental, or sexual development markers, or simply a birth certificate, something that easy to be able to determine the age. And height can easily be measured using a measuring tape to determine the exact height of the individual. So now that they had data for both Neanderthals and humans, it was time to analyze it. So what they decided to do was they were going to graph the Homo neanderthals data versus the Homo sapiens data and see how it fit together. They would then test the null hypothesis that Neanderthal growth rates were the same as humans during the 0 to 5 age range. But upon doing this, they realized something, and that was these two sets of data were clearly distinct and did not fit, and that these two species did not grow at the same rates during this age range. And this was very clear in a graph that they produced. As we can see here, this is the graph comparing human growth in early childhood to Neanderthal growth in early childhood. And the blue area, the light blue area, the curve is human growth, average human growth, and the dots, the black dots and the error bars are Neanderthal data collected, and we can see that early on Neanderthal growth rates are close to modern human growth rates, but as time moves on and they get older, the growth rates clearly are distinct from one another. So they used a chi-square test to show that the two sets of data were significantly different from one another. And after doing that, they realized that it is true that Neanderthal data was clearly distinct from that of human data. So since the Neanderthal data didn't fit the human growth model, they needed to figure out a model that would fit Neanderthal data and be able to estimate the growth rates of Neanderthals since they were so distinct from humans. So here came the difficult part, and that was finding the model that would fit the data. So using the age and height data collected on the 10 Neanderthal specimens, they could formulate a mathematical model. They used a computer software system to produce an algorithm that would fit this data that then they could use to predict the growth rates of Neanderthals depending upon the age. So using this model, they were able to produce two graphs, the first being the growth curve. And the growth curve showed that the growth rates differed between the three populations that they studied. The green being the average size humans of the Spanish clinic, the blue data being that of the Invinci reindeer herders of central Siberia, and the red being the Neanderthal fossils that they collected. So this shows that Neanderthals do grow at a much slower rate than modern humans. But more importantly, as we look at the growth velocity graph, it seems that they grow at the same rate early on in their life. Only after a while of living do the velocities of growth differ, and that results in differing growth rates between the three populations that were studied. But again, this model clearly shows, though, that Neanderthals grow at distinct rates from modern humans. So, what does this mean? Neanderthals differ from modern humans in height growth patterns during infancy and early childhood, and this then might result in the reason that their statures are different when they become adults. Also, this graph showed us that the growth rates right after birth between these two species are very alike. It's only after a matter of a couple months do the growth rates between these two species differ so greatly. But also another issue arose, and the scientists addressed this, that he used mathematical models to estimate height that are used for modern humans based off the femur and tibia length. and he used this mathematical model to estimate Neanderthal height. This then might lead to incorrect data off the height of Neanderthals, which then might skew his formula that he was able to produce and then skew the model that he was able to produce. So this then leads to a little bit of question when it comes to the final results. You might be sitting there wondering, why does this matter? I mean, Neanderthals are extinct, but it's important because understanding the emergence of distinctive human growth patterns is essential to understanding the evolution of our species. Since we shared a common ancestor with Neanderthals relatively recently, understanding how they grew and how we grew and the difference can be crucial in understanding human evolution and how we became the species that we are today. Well, this is the end of the presentation, and hopefully you learned some really important things and the differences between Neanderthal growth and human growth. And hopefully you understand the impact that this paper has on human evolution. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you have a great day.
Amazing. This is truly groundbreaking stuff. Back to the studio with Kara and Stephanie.
Thank you, Alexis, for that blast from the past.
Have a good night. This is College Park News with your anchors, Kara
And Stephanie.
signing off.
Rock on, College Park.